Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net, and I'm your host, Mike the Birdman. And, well, I'm not alone as we return from the wonders of summer vacation here on TWIG. I'm joined by the man in the command center in Kitchener himself.
Yeah, Alex, the producer.
That's right, guys. So we were actually supposed to come back last week on the show, and we did extend our vacation, and for very good reason. So here at the Birdcage here in the lovely city of Guelph, Ontario, my apartment flooded 3 times. So that was panic and a half. And the wonderful thing that, wonderful, I say that in quotation marks. So literally, I was just getting ready to record one of my reviews that you hear each and every week here on the show. And I messaged Alex in a fucking panic. I'm like, oh, by the way, my apartment is flooding shit. I don't think we're going to be able to record today. So literally my kitchen sink had overflowed because the laundry room is right next to my apartment. And something had been clogging the drains. And we were bailing out water by the gallon. And it was coming up fast and furious. Now, we're lucky that my wheelchair didn't short out because the charger for that thing has to sit on the floor to charge my wheelchair constantly. And also, my computer sits on the floor because you wouldn't think anything of it. Like, it's not like it's a carpeted floor or anything. But we're like, shit. Plus, the subwoofer to my stereo sits on the floor and it's powered. So, throwing things up, hoping not to get electrocuted. Fortunately, we were able to solve that problem. So, we figured our problems were done because the plumber came. He snaked 40 feet of line. Cool. And then it happened again. Literally almost to the same fucking time. So we call my super in the building. We're like, oh my God, it's happening again. Luckily, Blair caught it literally seconds after it happened, but it still managed to soak the floor. It's underneath the floor. We're likely going to have to get our entire kitchen replaced at this point. It wasn't pretty from the first time. Like, literally, my fucking forks and spoons were floating in yeah, it was bad.
It's I guess a houseboat.
Yeah, it was. My God, I was surprised how much water came out. So thankfully,
now computer and electronics are now rack mounted on a movable rack.
Yes.
So everything's about a foot off the ground.
Yeah, so we're like, fuck you. Not gonna tempt fate there, so I'm just gonna knock on wood there for a sec. But
we say that, and then like the sky will open up and drip water directly on top of it.
Yeah, so we got that done. We got that dealt with. So as I mentioned, we were on vacation during all of this, but we did still sporadically release shows as the Summer Game Fest with IGN and other outlets had done more extended coverage of certain things like Stadia, Ubisoft, Nintendo, Microsoft. All those things came out. We talked about those. So thank you for listening to those. Alex took some mini-sodes during that time as well. I also decided to take some time for myself to play some video games. Now, I did not get to play Persona 4 Golden during this time, but I did finish Final Fantasy VII Remake. And that took me just a little over 40 hours to finish. that was a fantastic experience. I'm very glad that I did play it. And I'm glad they took the time to plan this out and they didn't try to cram everything into one game. One of the major complaints is, well, it's only a part of a game. You know what? I'm okay with it. It doesn't like because you have to look at the way technology and storytelling and game design has evolved since the 90s, and to do something in that scale and scope is not necessarily
90% of the original game was grinding to get between places,
yeah.
and this was 90% story.
Yes, exactly. I'd rather have more story, less grind. I found the grind here, you don't really need to. It helps, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
There's only a very few sections where it will really help you. That last boss fight, and being basically, it only really helps you in boss fights. Like there weren't any areas where you felt like you were going to get your ass kicked because you were coming up against super powerful enemies, because it was
Only
more
2 spots. The final boss fight, obviously, but the monster house.
yeah.
If you're not playing it on easy or you're not prepared, the monster house will wreck your shit.
Yeah, like you got to be ready, and there's only so much dodging and guarding you can do because you'll get grinded down.
Yeah, like, hot tip, if you're playing on hard, turn that one down to normal or easy for that battle the first time you do it, and then tackle it on hard on a second playthrough.
So ultimately, though, fantastic experience. Glad I did it. Will I play through it again? Probably not. But
maybe when PS5 version comes out, I want to see what the graphics look like.
Yeah, because hopefully my save will transfer over.
Yeah. If it doesn't, what I see happening is us doing a playthrough right before the next game comes out.
Yeah, just to refresh our memory. And Aerith is my girl. I love the facial animation in this in this game.
It's really, you say movie because that's not a slip of the tongue, but it's pretty darn close to being like a living movie.
Yeah, like I was so impressed throughout the entirety of it.
So much more characterization, like as attached as you might have been to Avalanche when you first played it.
You care more now.
Yeah. Not only that, it's what's really shown off here is that they truly are a splinter cell of Avalanche.
Yeah, like they were kicked out.
When you play the first game, the original game, they make it out like Avalanche is some big organization, and you only ever see like you're like it's 5 people. In this one, it's like, oh no, there's like an underground army, and you guys are the radicals.
Yeah.
So
like
they really show that.
Yeah, like it was really, really, really well done. Fantastic voice performances in the game. Like it was just incredible. And little nuances I noticed, like when you walk behind Cloud and whatever sword he has equipped, the materia always shimmers and shines and moves. I thought that was a nice touch. It goes into cutscenes as well. There's only very few where it reverts back to your Buster Sword, and I was tremendously impressed with that overall. So I played that. I watched a lot of movies, and one thing that we're doing, because Loose Cannon will be starting up back again really soon, along with future Imperfect. I decided to sign back up for some anime services. So I signed back up for High Dive. I always have had my press account via Funimation, and I signed up for Tubi again, and I had Retro Crunch as well. So I'm going to start watching more anime, and you may see more anime covered on TWIG, because we've always talked about it, and 2020 is year of the dumpster fire. So
hence Alex watching 328 episodes in just under a couple weeks.
So yeah, I'm deciding to not play catch up, but I'm going to take 2020 as a year of good mental health. So I might as well try and have some fun with some things, because there's no point in, I'm not going to say be miserable, but you know what? maybe it is for the best. Maybe I can explore and expand my horizons. My goal, and this kind of ties into Future Imperfect, always be improving, always be learning, always be open to new experiences. Never isolate yourself and put yourself in a bubble from new experiences. So maybe I'll try things like the Orville, because there's only 2 seasons, and rumor is season 3 maybe the last one. So we'll wait and see what happens. So now that I've rambled on for about 10 minutes, Alex, in about 3 or 4 minutes or less, what have you been up to in the last little bit?
Not sleeping and watching shows for research. I watched, like I said, 328 episodes of an anime in preparation to play a game, which the review of the game is in the show, which is the Fairy Tail RPG. It is basically happy magic Dragon Ball Z is the best way to describe it. Whereas Black Clover I've described as Harry Potter Dragon Ball Z. This is the if you had to compare, this is Fairy Tail is like first 2 to 3 movies of Harry Potter, and then when it gets dark as shit, that's when it turns into Black Clover. So I had fun, just the right amount of fan service without being too stupid. There's logic holes in the show, but having something on in the background all day while you're doing other work can be fun. So I've done that, watched a few other shows, catching up on a couple things that I've wanted to see. And then it's been a lot of like really super humid days and really super rainy days, so not much you could really do. So it's a bit of a dry spell for gaming, I noticed, in the last couple weeks, other than the Fairy Tail game that I got. So it's been sort of nice just to kick back.
Good times. So speaking of what's going to be coming up on this show, so as Alex mentioned, we will be taking a look at the new Fairy Tail RPG. We're also going to be taking a look at the 12 Monkeys TV series that was recently released on Blu-ray, and then we're also going to take a look at a release from Vinegar Syndrome, which I never thought would ever see a proper release restored from the original 35mm negative, and that is the release of the horror movie, I'm not going to say classic, but horror movie, Spookies, which I only found old VHS rips on YouTube once upon a time. So we got all that and more to talk about the news, the weird news, and I'm sure something else stupid will happen. This is This Week in Geek. I'm Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, the producer. We'll be back right after Spookies.
What's this supposed to be? Looks sort of like a Parcheesi game or something.
I know what this is. I mean, I've never seen one like this before. It's a Ouija board.
Well, how do you play? Don't you need dice or something?
You don't play. The Ouija board is a tool for communication.
Communication with who?
The dead.
Hey guys, it's Mike the Birdman here, and I'm here to talk to you about a new release from Vinegar Syndrome that I really didn't think would ever actually get released, and that is their 2-disc Blu-ray set of Spookies. This movie is known in horror circles as being kind of a weird movie. It's got a lot of behind-the-scenes drama, from people getting fired and taken off the movie to new stuff being shot, nobody knowing what was really going on for a long time. And a lot of people in this movie have since died. Not related, of course, at least I don't think so, but it's got a history behind it, and it was more or less forgotten for a really, really, really long time. I found it randomly on YouTube about 3 years ago from a really shitty VHS copy, so I really gave up hope on ever seeing this in a particularly good format. Fortunately, Vinegar Syndrome came in the clutch and produced a newly restored 4K version from the original 35mm camera negative, and it looks fantastic. I'm watching this and probably about the best quality I possibly can. I've got it set up on a new 4K TV. I got my PlayStation 4, my Xbox One. It looks great. Like, I'm really impressed with the picture. It looks way better than shitty YouTube quality, I'll tell you that much. But the main reason I'm really impressed with this movie, outside from the movie itself being kind of, well, frankly, a clusterfuck, it's an entertaining clusterfuck, it's the special features, and Vinegar Syndrome almost always does an amazing job with these. So I'm actually just going to read off some of the special features here, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth with them. So you get 2 feature-length documentaries. One's about 2 hours, and the other one's just a little over an hour and a half at like 140 minutes. So one is called Twisted Tale, The Unmaking of Spookies, which features a lot of cast and crew interviews from people from directors, writers, producers, actors, stuff like that. People who can give you real insight into the movie. They also tell you what's happened to certain people. Like, some of the people have died since this movie's come out. Like, one of the actresses passed away in 2017. One of the directors passed away in 2016, 2017. One of the actors who actually is in the special features passed away, but it's an archival thing, I guess they did. There's also a documentary on Vipco, who is a pretty infamous UK video label. That's a name you may recognize from the UK video nasties controversy of the 1980s. And it features extensive interviews with film historians, other academics, but also with the founder of Vipco, Michael Lee, who pretty much admits he built his career off of not being a very nice guy at times. And there's extended interview footage with him. There's a trailer. There's Q&A footage and stuff from an Alamo Drafthouse screening back in 2015. There is an archival location feature out with one of the actors, the guy who gets killed by the spider lady. There's some outtakes and bloopers, behind-the-scenes stills gallery, and a theatrical trailer, which is from the new footage recut. So it looks fantastic. So this movie, in short, it's a haunted house movie that gets crossed with like a weird plot with a sorcerer or some kind of a magic user to resurrect his dead wife, and zombies, a zombie kid, a cat man with a hook for a hand, and really weird special effects. And this is where you may have seen this if you hang out on YouTube long enough. The farting zombie comes from. It's weird, but this movie is so strangely entertaining, and it went unnoticed for a really, really, really long time. Like, I hadn't met anybody who'd ever heard of it since, well, ever. I found it randomly on YouTube years ago at like 3 o'clock in the morning on some random YouTube playlist, which was a shitty VHS release from the 1980s. I think it was Vestron or Sony released it at that time. So it wasn't a very good copy, but here it looks fantastic. The main reason I'm actually going to recommend that you pick this up, the special features are fantastic. The documentary, The Twisted Tale, The Unmaking of Spookies, does a lot to explain what happened. It tells you how this movie started out as Twisted Souls, which is what they wanted to make, and then through a lot of interference from that Michael Lee guy, it didn't turn out like they wanted to, and they got taken off the movie. And they don't like him, like, really, really. In fact, one of the women is quoted in this movie is, "Wherever Michael Lee is, I hope he's burning in hell." So that's powerful words. The other one, the Vipco, The Untold Story, it's a little more dry, and it's a lot longer at around 2 hours, if I remember right. But it is interesting to see just how the video distribution thing worked in the 1980s and how they picked up this reputation and how there's this weird underground community which collects Vipco releases. I don't think they're around anymore, and all their later stuff was all cut to crap to fall in line with the video nasty law that the UK passed. But it was fascinating to hear about all this because as a Canadian or somebody who lives in North America more specifically, we never really had this sort of thing, but they do talk about the driller killer, like Cannibal Ferox, I think is another one of their releases, and that's just fascinating stuff that I never knew about. So Spookies is, I think, one of those things. Go watch a trailer on YouTube, maybe go watch another more in-depth review of the movie, but ultimately I can recommend it as a horror fan, especially as someone who comes out of that 1980s horror fan aesthetic. I love the special effects. The Spider-Woman sequence today, I still think is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. There's this snake demon, which kills this young woman. It like brutally attacks her. Then at one point it like melts her face or something. There's this cool Grim Reaper effect where he randomly falls off a roof and blows up. Fun fact, during that stunt, someone was almost killed by a flying, I think it was like a can of WD-40, because that's how they created the explosion, and it went whipping by one of the, like, camera people. So, good times. However, though, like I said, it's an amazing movie. I thoroughly enjoy it. It is cheesy in all the right ways, and there's a guy talking with a puppet at times, just because, why the hell not? Plus, the girl who plays the sorceress's wife, Maria Pachucas, who unfortunately passed away in 2017, is probably my newfound girl crush, because she is so incredibly beautiful. Unfortunately, her life has some tragic turns, as you'll learn in the documentary. But anyway, that being said, Spookies from Vinegar Syndrome gets an absolute recommend from me. Pick this up. You can pick it up from Vinegar Syndrome's website or any other major online retailer such as Amazon.
News on the march.
All right, guys, we are back here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Once again, I am Mike, the Birdman. Let's talk about the news that happened around, the planet this past week or so. As we were on vacation, we're not going to be talking about anything that happened big previously. Comic-Con happened. Yay, you couldn't find a fucking thing. That was the end of it. Didn't see anything. That
I didn't even know it existed. Like, that tells you how much... how little of importance it had this year.
Well, it's kind of just kind of briefly, I did see a thread that somebody posted. I think it was from Variety or Twitter. Comic-Con at Home was a spectacular flop because not many people knew where to find things. The schedule was very haphazard, and the average views for their live streams were down significantly. And most people only watch the trailers and teasers. They don't watch the full panels to begin with. So,
well, I only knew of two things that came out of this. I knew they premiered Kevin Smith's was it Kilroy was here?
And Green Hornet series. Yeah,
which the Kilroy was here is an anthology now. He was originally going to be a full movie, but he's made it like Creepshow. It's multiple movies together. It looks disturbing as hell and funny. And then all I knew was I only knew it was even happening because there was a whole lot of hubbub about Zack Snyder just lacing into
Joss Whedon.
And how Joss Whedon pulled out of having his own panel and then sort of jumped into somebody else's for a bit, and how it's looking more and more like his career is over.
The only things I remember is the Kevin Smith Green Hornet. There's a new Walking Dead spinoff. I forget what it's called, but it's about teenagers 10 years after the virus, and that looks actually pretty neat. I actually
shouldn't it just be called Walking Dead, Just Let It Die?
That's actually not a terrible name for a short story. But no, it's about teenagers trying to sort of they have to cross country for some reason. And there's a great shot in the trailer of a zombie, I guess, who's stuck to something, and a hive of bees has made their home in the zombie's head. And the zombie opens its mouth and all the bees start shooting out. It looks really, really cool.
That made me think of The Simpsons. You're not going to sick the bees on me, or the dogs that have bees in their mouth. When they bark, they shoot bees at me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, actually. So, so not a lot of Comic-Con news that I care about. There were some cool toys to come out of it. Nothing I'm going to order. So
there won't be really any Comic-Con news or movie news like that until next year, because everything from this year's already pushed.
Yeah.
So
this year,
short of them saying the only thing that could happen would be we've inked a deal to work on new properties in the next 5 years. Big deal. And nobody even did that.
I think the most popular panel and trailer to come out of Comic-Con is they showed the first few minutes of Disney's / Fox's New Mutants, which they even made fun of themselves, which we'll actually talk about. I don't know whether I cut that story or not, but
we'll end up watching it for sure.
Oh, yeah. I want to see it because it's X-Men. So
yeah, but to give you an idea, that movie was announced before I had major stomach surgery years ago.
I remember it 2017.
Before that, even it was announced in like 2015. I think they started shooting it in 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, because I remember Maisie Williams, who plays Arya Stark on Game of Thrones, was starring as Wolfsbane, and she's always been one of those characters in the X-Men universe I've always kind of liked the look of, because she turns into this feral mutant type character. And I'm thinking, all right, well, that's kind of cool. Arya Stark's going to be in it. And the kid that plays Cannonball, Sam Guthrie, is, I think, from Shameless, I want to say, excuse me.
Okay.
And it looks neat, and it ties into the original Fox X-Men universe.
So it's the last thing.
Yeah, it's the last gasp in that franchise. So,
and the problem is they had to do reshoots, and the kids had aged so much they had to CG them to look younger.
So, yikes! It's supposed to hit theaters on August 28th. And
well, actually, wait, that's technically the last one, but I heard that they are still working on putting together another Deadpool movie, and if that does, that would be, I guess, the last thing in the connected universe. Or would they use that to bridge the gap?
There's rumors they'll bridge the gap to the MCU. I don't know. Like, Deadpool's going to be the weird outlier when it comes to...
He's the only one that could do that. Like, he could literally break the fourth wall and be like, well, I'm done with this dead franchise, and then he just like does like Wayne's World, diddle-a-doo, diddle-a-doo, makes the whole screen fade. Now they're in the other universe.
Yeah, and that would be a clever way to do it. This way you don't have to explain Infinity Stones or whatever.
And he could still have an unhealthy obsession with like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine in that, and have nobody in that universe know what he's talking about.
See, that's clever, Fox, or not Fox, Disney, if you're listening. So let's break into the news proper. We're going to stick with kind of movie news, because this is a movie that has been pushed around a shit ton this summer, and I'm talking about Christopher Nolan's Tenet. So this movie is going to open internationally before the U.S. debut due to coronavirus closures. So Christopher Nolan's Tenet will be released, after all, first overseas and then later in select states. The highly anticipated action film starring Robert Pattinson, John David Washington, will open internationally on August 26th, followed by select U.S. cities over Labor Day weekend. The cities have yet to be announced. According to Variety, the movie will open in over 70 countries next month, including Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Korea, Russia, and the United Kingdom. This following the studio's tease from last week, and Warner Brothers told Variety in a statement the film was to be pushed back until they have formulated a plan. We will share a new 2020 release date imminent for Tenet, Christopher Nolan's wholly original, mind-blowing feature, Warner Brothers chairman Toby Emmerich said in a statement obtained by the outlet. Our goals throughout this process have been to ensure the highest odds of success for our films, while also being ready to support our theater partners with new content as soon as they are able to safely reopen. The decision comes as two of the biggest movie markets in the U.S., New York City and Los Angeles, are still far from reopening indoor theaters. New York City has entered phase 4 of reopening, with zoos welcoming guests back starting on July 24th, although indoor exhibits remain closed, according to ABC 7 New York. The news outlet reported that movie theaters, museums, malls will have to postpone their own reopenings. In Los Angeles, movie theater reopenings remain uncertain as COVID-19 cases continue to rise. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti admitted on Sunday while on CNN that the city reopened too quickly and that it was on the brink of a new shutdown orders, according to ABC 7. You know what? Okay. You're not going to open in the U.S. before the fall. It is not going to happen.
Half of our theaters have already opened in my town. The landmark ones are open. And because you can order through the Atom app, I can see how many seats are being sold. And it's not good for them as far as business. But when I've seen screenings, they were showing like Troll World Tour and Bloodshot, any movies that were supposed to have been out. Like the last things they were going to be showing before they closed, they
maybe
opened up with them.
Maybe?
Scoob is there in that. I looked, they're selling like 5 tickets per showing.
It's going to cost them more in overhead to open.
They're getting like government subsidy back to sort of help them, but also whatever. And the ticket prices are $5 flat, so that's like $3 American. Tuesdays is $3, so it's like $2 American. And I was like, they're only showing 2 screenings per day with longer times between each one, so they can steam clean every single seat. Even if only 3 people are there, they have to clean every single seat. And I'm like, okay, what's Cineplex doing? And they're like, well, we're open, but not every city, because they're not doing all the same things that the Landmark one is. So if Landmark gets the movie, and if I can see, because I can cancel up to like 5 minutes before the movie starts, if I could see there, if I go like, hey, Tenet is going to be showing, and there's only going to be 6 of us in a theater that holds 300 or 400, I would consider it. And that's also pretty much a full month away still. So, as it gets closer, I'd be like, if things look bad, I'm just not going to go. But I would consider it for that. I would not consider it if I was in the States.
Absolutely not.
I would not consider it if it was in a city where they had outbreaks still happening.
Well, supposedly, from what I understand, do not quote me on this, like the United States has like thousands of new cases per day.
Yeah, it's still bad. It's not worse. It's worse than it was before. Like LA is basically closing.
Yeah, like they opened way too quickly. Hotspots like Florida, Arizona, California, they're not ready for it. It's bad.
We were shut down tight until like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and
so
even now
for basically
reopening.
I was going to say basically 4 months. Ontario was shut down. Look what happened in Alberta. They opened like after a month and a half, and they're still full of bullshit happening because they're basically following the American model. And Quebec had problems too.
Yeah,
but other than that, like we're doing significantly better. So as long as like if I were to go to order a ticket, Michael, and I saw that it said 100 people had ordered, like the maximum I think for the screen is like 50 people. Yeah. Even if the screen has like 400 seats, and if I looked and they're like there's 40 people, I'd be like, no, I'll wait for another day.
Yep.
But if I go and they're like, hey, there's 20 people, and it's on like a Tuesday at like noon or something, I'll be like, well, since most businesses are now back open, most people are headed back to work in the last week or so, and by the end of the month they will be. You're less likely to get in contact with people that have had contact with the outside world, if that makes any sense. There's going to be more people like us that have been shut in the whole time that are going to go see things. So I'll be cautiously optimistic about it, but in no way, if I get any inkling whatsoever that I'm like, that seems like too many people's, then I just won't do it.
I'm not considering the earliest I would consider is Black Widow in November, and I assure you that's getting pushed. Maybe like Ghostbusters in March.
Yeah, like in your case, like I would, if I were you, because for you, like the more things you add up, the more health risks you have, the higher risk you are for it too.
Yeah,
you're at an even higher risk because you've had a history of having to go to the hospital for different things.
Yeah.
So in that case, the one advantage you have is that when you go, you're in a wheelchair, you sit in your own spot. You aren't actually touching anything in the theater, and most people wouldn't be sitting around you. So you're probably safer than most people, but just to be safe, unless it's a major thing, like when we saw, was it the Kevin Smith movie, one of the last things we saw together in the theater? Yeah, like when we went to that was pretty packed because it was a single special event. Don't expect a lot, if any, of these roadshow events to happen until next year, because
later.
Yeah, or if they do it, like if Kevin Smith were to do another one, it wouldn't be a 1-night event or 2-night. It would have to be something where they spread it out. Like, we're going to do 5 showings today, and we're only going to allow 20 people in for each showing. So it's going to be an interesting thing, but like I understand why they're opening now, because most of the rest of the world is over this. Not over it, but most of the rest of the world is at a point now where they can manage everything. And it's basically the States and Brazil that have screwed everything up.
So, yeah, don't count on going to the movies anytime soon. So, moving on to our next story. This one, I think, is a really, really good and feel-good story because, we need something. So, a teacher has raised $16,000 on Twitch to wipe out a school's lunch debt. So, I'm just going to read part of this article from Kotaku.com. So, for one high school teacher, Zachary J. Chalky McCarter, is focusing on injustices he can actually do something about, namely the quiet ravages of lunch debt. Lunch debt is a serious issue in the United States. At many schools, kids and their families remain on the hook for all meals they eat, regardless of their ability to pay. Nearly 30 million children rely on free or reduced priced lunches, but in order to qualify for them, their families' incomes must hover between 130 and 185% of the federal poverty line. However, for many families who do not qualify, the cost of meals, typically a few dollars per day, adds up quickly. According to a 2019 Al Jazeera piece on the issue, a high school student can rack up $770 in annual bills on breakfast and lunch, enough to strain low and middle income families past the breaking point. With COVID-19 leaving millions unemployed, many families are in dire straits, and an issue at least slightly alleviated by lunch pickup programs that allow people to obtain free lunches from whichever school is closest without providing proof of low income status. But now, through school systems are pushing the federal government to keep that program going through the fall, it's on the verge of lapsing. With little hopes of renewal from Trump's agricultural department, lunch debt then stands to punch a bigger hole in the family's incomes than ever. McCarter, who used to teach in Oklahoma, but who has recently moved to Omaha, Nebraska, is set to begin teaching German at a high school in the area this fall, takes issue with the whole system. I know what it's like to be hungry, the agitation that comes with it, the inattentiveness, the inability to pay attention in class that some teachers might misinterpret as you just not caring. When I went to high school, I sometimes didn't eat because I didn't want to put my family in debt. I would always just skip lunch and just wait until I got home, McCarter told Kotaku over a Discord voice call. In my classroom, I have food in my cabinets so that when students come in who did not have a lunch, I can at least provide them with food. I would tell them, don't feel bad at all because I know what it's like to be hungry. The agitation that, what I just said, the quote before, I know how it is, and you can totally trust me. Come into my classroom, get some food, and completely go about your day as if it never happened. McCarter, who also regularly streams on Twitch, recently realized that he could do even more. Last week, he organized and ran a charity speedrun marathon called All Kids Deserve to Eat 2020. He aimed to raise $13,000 so as to completely wipe out the lunch debt of an elementary school in Ralston, Nebraska. He and the speedrunners he collaborated with blew past that goal, raising over $16,000 by the time all was said and done. Initially, All Kids Deserve to Eat was just going to be a 24-hour stream, but despite the fact the lunch debt often goes unremarked in its labyrinthine nightmare bureaucracy that is America, McCarter was heartened to discover that a whole lot of people cared. I set it up as something that people could sign up for that I would host on my channel for 24 hours. It had so many submissions that I thought, how about I break this into 2 days for 15 hours each? After that first day, it was beyond my wildest dreams of what we raised at that time. I unlocked the third day, and we still started smashing goals that we had. So I opened up a fourth day that ended up being a 26-hour stream. So it was like a fifth day as well. All Kids Deserve to Eat unfolded almost like a miniature Games Done Quick event with commentary, race, donation incentives that even included a famous GDQ moment that the save kill portion of Super Metroid, during which runners fleeing from an exploding planet Zebes must decide whether to save innocent animals who help Samus during the journey or shave precious screen frames off their runtimes. Traditional mandates that donators choose. McCarter sprinkled multiple Super Metroid runs throughout All Kids Deserve to Eat, so the animals at least died for a good cause. The Save Kill donation incentive alone raised over $6,000, said McCarter, and that was pretty mind-blowing. And then the article just kind of goes on.
Now, this is something that's very, very foreign, I think, to most Canadians. We've never had free food at school.
I did.
Is that something that is only like very rural?
I guess, because when I went to high school in 96 to 2000, I would come in because I got, as the story goes, I got kicked out of my house when I was 18 years old or 17. I was very, very young. So I got my first bachelor apartment, and I would go to school in the morning. I'd be at school at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. And there was always there was always a breakfast program.
Well, the breakfast programs are usually like funded partially by like the parent teacher council, if they had them. But like that's usually like here's some cereal and toast, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we had fried egg sandwiches and cereal. And
not every school had that.
Yeah,
but I mean like cafeterias, like I'm talking like grade school. You hear about it all the time in the States. You see it in TV shows where like kids go to school and their lunch is like covered, or they have it like hot lunch served every day. Like I've never seen a single school that was kindergarten to grade 8 that had hot lunch cafeteria.
We never had that. I mean, when I went to elementary school in the 80s, we would have pizza and hot dog days, but you still had to pay for those. But it was usually like $1.
I even talked to my parents, like, that's the Toronto school board. If any school board had money, it would have been there. And they said, yeah, there was never like you never had school lunches until you went to high school. And it was, at that point, it was heavily subsidized. And I was like, what? He was like 50 cents would get you a plate of fries. And that was like when I went to high school, French fries, you could get a large French fry for $1.75. It was like $2 with gravy. And the next year, like 2001 or 2002, the government completely shut down the subsidy program, and it became run by Chartwells. And every piece of food item on the menu doubled in price.
Yep. We used to get a large fry, a plate of fries for me in the 90s was I think $2.50. If you wanted a large, it was $3.50 with gravy.
Yeah.
When I left high school, I know those prices jumped significantly. However, though, shout out to my old high school, West Hill. I had several lunch ladies that were just really, really, really friendly to me. And they let me have a lunch debt. Like by the time I left high school, I think I owed maybe $30. I never did pay it back because I was poor. I was literally surviving off of scraps that my grandfather gave me to pay my rent and everything else when I was living on my own, because finding a job in my old hometown was yuck. But anyway,
but still, like that's what I'm trying to say is that like you always see it in TV shows in the States, and you hear about like it's just sort of expected. It seems that like grade school kids get free lunches or lunch covered, and maybe I didn't know there was a debtors thing involved with it, but like here that is a very foreign term that like a grade 5 kid gets a free lunch at school.
I mean, to me, that just seems to be like it should be a thing. You go to school, they should feed you. I mean, I'm not saying you should get Pizza Hut every day, but you should get something nutritious that follows the Canada Food Guide.
Well, and like in high school, everybody was buying fries because it was cheap, but there was always a healthier option. Like there was a taco salad you could buy for like $5. You could buy usually a chili or a soup. There were some pretty standard things like that. But I thought that was only for high schools because I've never heard of anybody, at least that's in Ontario, ever having a lunch program like that.
At the elementary level,
yeah,
right?
You would have like Toonie Tuesdays when KFC brought that out, and you'd have like Pizza Hut or Pizza Day Fridays every other Friday or something, and that was it. Like there was never like a nutritious lunches thing or anything. We never had anything like that, and that goes back like 60 years. We didn't have that, so that's why I was wondering if it was something that maybe happened up north. Maybe the further away you were from. Like if I figured maybe if you had to be like bussed into school for like an hour in the morning or something, maybe they would have something like that. But like I always heard about that in the States, and I always see it in TV shows, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. Like we were poor, and it was like, so there was a lot of peanut butter sandwich had for lunch until we were told we couldn't bring peanut butter to school anymore.
Yeah, which is weird because my wife is a teacher, and you hear about all these allergies now, and obviously it's not any kid's fault. The strangest one I've heard.
I heard my parents were livid at the teacher when they told me that I couldn't eat peanut butter at school, or I'd have to go and eat in the disciplinary room. And they said, why don't you make the kid that's allergic go to the disciplinary room? Like, why you're making the whole school suffer because 3 kids in the whole school are allergic? And they were pissed. They're like, we're poor. We can't afford it. You want to pay for his lunch? And I remember that was a big thing, to the point where they almost moved me to a different classroom.
I remember my wife, she came home one day and she told me some of the tales she'd heard out of her school board. I'm keeping things intentionally very vague here. But there were kids that were allergic to shellfish, which makes sense.
That's a common one even back in the day.
But there are ones where there's an airborne allergy to dairy. I'd never heard that.
I never
before.
heard. That's a very like that. A lot of that has come from what they believe to be a lot of the additives we had in our food, or our parents did multi generations of having basically crappy diets.
Yeah.
And because if you look back in the day, even when we were little kids, peanuts were fairly new, but that like peanut allergies, like my parents said, that just didn't exist when they were kids. I'm like, what do you mean? Like people just didn't have that, and like, and if they did, maybe they died because like that was not a thing. But they said that shellfish was always one, strawberries was always one.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, weird, eh? But like they remembered that one, but specifically it was shellfish that, and then you had kids that had asthma for like hay fever and crap, but there wasn't like these
fatal allergies.
Yeah, the massive ones like you smell a peanut and your body falls apart. So like there, and that became like the peanut allergy thing became huge in the early 90s.
Yeah, I seem to recall it more in the 90s going into the 2000s.
Yeah, like 95 to like 2000. It went from having like one kid at my school, and we had about 900 kids at my school, to like 30 or 40.
Yeah, so yikes. However, though, this story, like I said, does have a happy ending, thankfully.
Absolutely. But yeah, maybe if any listeners want to let us know that are in the States, like, was school lunch programs, is that something common to your area?
Yeah, or if any Canadian listeners are tuning in, let us know what the lunch programs were like for you growing up, or if you have siblings or family that are in the school system right now. I'd love to know. I actually haven't asked my wife about this, whether it's a thing here. Maybe it is a rural thing. So
I'm fairly positive it's not in any of the big cities here.
Yeah, I could believe it. So moving on to our next story. This one comes out of the Comic-Con we just, shit on for a few minutes. So evidently the USS Discovery has found itself in a future far beyond anything we've seen in Star Trek, coming out of its second season, which concluded this year, I believe. And now we know just when we'll see them navigate that future. Having said nothing at all about the upcoming season, at its Comic-Con panel for Star Trek last week, CBS just announced that Star Trek Discovery will return to CBS All Access on October 15th, which means we will also get that on Crave in Canada. The week after Star Trek Lower Decks first season will conclude on the service, so you've got much nonstop Trek every week starting in early August. The season briefly teased approximately 7 billion years ago at New York City Comic-Con 2019. We'll see the time-strewn Discovery crew find the Federation of 930 years in their future a pretty dire place to be, and take it upon themselves to help restore it to the ideals that have led Starfleet's endurance across the centuries. Discovery's
it's basically Star Trek Andromeda this time.
Yeah.
Because that was the plot of that. It's like the Federation's fallen, we have to rebuild it.
Discovery's third season will run for 13 episodes and will run continuously with no breaks, as there was in the show's first season, when it lands on CBS All Access later on this year. So, still don't care.
Yeah, I'll watch it. The no break. Well, first of all, they've cut the episode order down because they had to expand it in the past because they went over shooting time and budget and all this stuff. I feel like they finally worked those kinks out, but I also feel like they're doing this 13 weeks in a row, starting right away, because that'll be about the time that the contract would have been up for 3 years of exclusivity. I predict that this service is shutting down.
CBS All Access?
Yes. What else have they added in the last 3 years?
Well, they did announce there's another Star Trek show that got announced, but I can't remember what the fuck it was.
The Georgiou one, which is like there's the one where she's like working for the secret society or whatever, Section
31 or the whatever the fuck it is.
And
Star
the Pike
Trek,
one,
Lower Decks, which I think it got picked up for a second season.
Yeah, so either they're smart and going, hey, we have these multi-month gaps with absolutely zero programming, and we're not just talking Star Trek. Like, they have other shows that they air a few of them on the channel or on the service, but they literally go months without adding anything new.
Yeah, it's weird because we just signed up for CBS All Access in Canada. The Canada service is only $5 a month, but it's crippled. Like, we don't get
no Star Trek because it's all on Crave.
Yep, Crave and Netflix. We don't get Big Brother in Canada, which is really weird. Okay, we don't get Big Brother on CBS All Access, but we do get Survivor, which is, once again, kind of weird. We get not all the back catalog of shows either. Like I said, it's very weirdly put together. In the States, it may be a better value, but up here, it's just not.
It feels like in Canada, they should just enter an agreement and give everything to Crave.
Yeah, like I don't see why they don't.
Because looking at their original programming, The Good Fight, which is a spinoff of
The Good Wife or something? Yeah.
which I heard is good. And it's had 4 seasons and it's been renewed again, so it's apparently one of their stronger performers. The Star Trek one's obviously Strange Angel, which ended after 2 seasons. $1 ended after 1 season. Tell Me a Story, which ended after 2 seasons. Like, they have a lot of their original programming they've already canceled. Twilight Zone, which in Canada I think that's Crave as well. Either that or it's on Space, like terrestrial regular.
I'm not sure where it is actually. I mean, and that's a show people should not sleep on. That show's fantastic.
Yeah, like I'm wondering if it has any like Canadian direct, because we always hear about it, but it seems like in Canada most people know it when it hits video. Like when the first season came out, it was like that's when most Canadians watched it. So, as far as anything else goes, they had like 2 drama comedies that are already either they're pending renewal or not. But like there's like 7 shows on the network, and they have other ones that they said that they've greenlit, like The Stand, a animal rescue docuseries from Richard Linklater, like The Man Who Fell to Earth. Isn't that a David Bowie movie that's being adapted into a show? Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I think that's the Pike one.
I think so, yeah.
And that is it. They have a few that are in development, but who knows if those are actually going to get made. Like they're running on the amount of shows, including ones that are in development, that you would see for a first season of a streaming network. And they're 4 years in.
Has it really been that long?
Well, they have 4 seasons of The Good Fight. Started in 2017, so 17, 18, 19, 20.
Wow, holy shit. So
exactly. So that's why I'm saying I don't know. I feel like they're creating it and keeping it going just because they're trying to tread water, but don't be surprised if CBS enters like some sort of agreement with like Hulu to just shift all their stuff, or Amazon Prime or something. They're not going to be able to survive on their own, not with a paid model like they have.
I don't know. I think the fact that they're only $5-6 a month, maybe,
in
but
Canada.
I don't know what their subscribe. I don't think it's that expensive in the States either. I
think it's like 10.
I'd like to see what their subscriber numbers are like, because that'll give us a better idea in terms of how many people are actually paying into this and
it's $6 a month in the States.
So that's
six US.
That's pretty good. I mean, you do have a pretty big back catalog, but if you're not adding new things and new value to it, you're just watching reruns.
Especially if they're not available on every streaming platform. Like, I know for a while it was either Apple or Roku that they weren't on. And it's like if you're not on one of those services, you lose 40% of the streaming market.
I know Apple used to, I think it was Apple used to carry old episodes of Survivor. So
yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like, I'd love to see them thrive, but
they have to find a reason why to survive. So.
And doing what they're doing, getting back to it, having every episode air weekly properly is great. In reality, they're trying to present themselves like a traditional network. People want to binge that shit, like especially with how Star Trek has not captured the audience that they were hoping for. They should just drop all the episodes at once and have like 1 week where we can binge through it.
What I think they should, I don't know whether I agree with that, because I think keeping people coming back each week is a good idea. The
show has to be good for that, though.
The show has to be good. So there has to be some kind of, maybe if they did like a Star Trek after show or something, I don't know. There has to be some kind of incentive, something low cost, low production, low overhead to get people involved. Say the one advantage they have is if they start, because right now it's mostly TV, they have very little movies.
if they start getting more movies, like they just announced a deal that as part of their expansion for this coming year, they're going to get the basically any Paramount Viacom movie, which obviously they're part of the same parent company. The SpongeBob movie, after going to premium video on demand pay-per-view, it's going to go there first. So if they start doing that, like if their theatrical movies right after theatrical before hitting home video go to the streaming there, that's a way to pull people in.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen in Canada because there is no movie section up here.
Exactly. So up here, it's whatever existing deal they would have with whatever, because they're another one of those situations where, Paramount, the movie division, might have a deal with Crave, but CBS, the television division, might have a deal with Amazon or something stupid like that.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to our next story, this one kind of disappoints me, even though I didn't expect it to. So Ron Howard confirms that Lucasfilm isn't developing a Solo, a Star Wars story sequel. Even though Solo, a Star Wars story probably doesn't rank highly on anyone's list of the best Star Wars films, the movie ended on a pretty big cliffhanger when it was released in 2018. So it makes sense that some fans are hoping to get a sequel, if only to tie up loose ends. Over the last 2 years, rumors about Lucasfilm's plans for the Alden Ehrenreich's young Han Solo have continued to swirl online. But now an update has come courtesy of director Ron Howard, and it's not very reassuring. Howard recently spoke to Radio Andy on Sirius XM's via comicbook.com about the various projects he's currently working on. Sadly, his upcoming slate doesn't include a Solo follow-up. He says, "Well, there's no sequel plan now," said Howard. "And it's amazing to be part of a Star Wars movie that seems to be kind of an underground hit, which is not what you'd expect, but that's an odd, strange journey for that movie. Strange doesn't even begin," this is the article continuing, "Strange doesn't even begin to describe Solo's evolution from concept to screen. Lucasfilm originally hired Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who directed the movie in 2015. They began shooting in 2017. However, the studio fired them a mere 5 months into production due to creative differences. Howard subsequently came on board to replace them, and he allegedly reshot at least 70% of the film. Howard's latest comments follow rumors that began making the rounds last week about how Lucasfilm was considering a new Disney Plus series headlined by Donald Glover's young Lando Calrissian. Unfortunately, a show like this probably won't be materializing anytime soon. Solo co-writer John Kasdan also weighed in on the character sequel back in March, but his outlook was similarly bleak. Regardless, Howard and Kasdan aren't completely severing their relationship with the House of Mouse. During the same interview with Radio Andy, Howard claimed that their long gestating Willow sequel series is in active development. I would have been really happy to see Donald Glover's Lando series. If it was six, yeah,
I didn't like him as that character at all.
Oh, I loved him as Lando.
I am an outlier in that I really, really didn't like it. I liked everything else about the movie except him, which is weird because everybody else seemed to love him and hated the movie.
The movie has kind of grown on me in the time since its release. It's not my favorite, but it has some really cool elements in it. Solo feels more like a first couple years of Star Wars West End Games RPG adventures. It's where someone takes an established character and takes their own spin on their backstory. It doesn't feel like a Timothy Zahn Star Wars novel, for example, what was like Heir to the Empire. It's never going to be the Thrawn trilogy, right? It's never going to be the gold standard. Or is it going to be Dave Filoni's Clone Wars or The Mandalorian? But Solo has elements in it that are interesting, and it's not terrible. I'd rather watch Solo than Phantom Menace again, outside of Duel of the Fates, if I had to pick. But Lando, for me, that character, I think has potential, because if you read some of the expanded EU stuff, there is some really cool stories that Lando never gets to tell. I would have loved to have seen him on his ship, the Lady Luck. I would love to have seen how he won Cloud City in a Sabacc match. There are just so many stories with Lando that could be told, and I think Donald Glover could carry it. It's depressing. A sequel to Solo, honestly, even if it wasn't a theatrical movie, a Disney Plus movie couldn't be terrible. Give them the same budget they gave The Mandalorian for 2 episodes. Okay, guys, you have an hour and a half of television. Do what you can with it and make it happen on 1 or 2 planets. Keep it really short, really snappy. You already have the costumes. You already have the technology they use in The Mandalorian, and go about it that way. It doesn't need to be this $200 million or however the hell much it was epic. Just do something cool with something smaller, which The Mandalorian proved you can do, and it feels more authentic to the original trilogy. So I'm sad because I think this could be cool, especially Ron Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, did some episodes of The Mandalorian, and she's capable. If you handed it to her, she could do it. Like everybody who directed The Mandalorian could handle a Star Wars story, Disney Plus sequel movie thing. So I'm sad. I want more Star Wars. I always want more Star Wars. And if you've been following the Star Wars media online, be thankful you're not Ray Park, because he's an asshole. I take it you know what I'm talking about.
I don't, but I don't doubt it.
He posted a very inappropriate video of his wife doing something to him as revenge. Because
that's bad.
Yeah, like
my God.
Yeah, so he's done with that character, and
he's probably done with a lot of work.
Yeah, the rumor, or at least the talk online, is right now they want the guy who's voiced Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, Sam Witwer, I can't pronounce his name. The guy who played fucking Doomsday in Smallville, and he was Starkiller in The Force Unleashed. They want him to continue on as Darth Maul. That's great, because Darth Maul is 90% prosthetics anyway. And as much as it was cool to see Maul come back and solo a Star Wars story right at the very end, cool. I mean, he's more an animated character now than he ever has been. I mean, he showed up in Clone Wars, he showed up in Rebels, so whatever. Anyway, moving on to my next story here. This one, kind of surprises me, but there's always been rumors about it for years. So according to Fox 32 Chicago and other outlets, Ellen DeGeneres investigation could end TV career, brand expert says. The Ellen DeGeneres show is currently under internal investigation by its parent company, Warner Media, after a number of toxic work environment allegations have gone public. In a report from BuzzFeed News, 1 current and 10 former staff members claimed to be victims of bullying and racism. Citing sources, Variety revealed that a memo was sent to the show staffers last week announcing that Warner's employee relations group has teamed up with a third-party organization to conduct the interviews. Eric Schiffer, a chairman of Reputation Management Consultants, weighed in on how the results of the investigation could have deadly consequences for Ellen and her brand. She could be perpetrating one of the biggest frauds in the American celebrity history, he suggested. There are now serious investigators looking into the allegations, and if the findings are as damning as what has been reported, you could watch the Ellen show go boom. Schiffer wasn't surprised when news of an investigation broke because there have been too many assertions that are credible, he alleged, adding that if the leadership team at Warner Media didn't act, they would feel the wrath of the public. The brand and PR expert also reacted to DeGeneres' silence on the matter. I think Ellen has been arrogant in her entire approach into dealing with the allegations, and it's crazy for her not to accept responsibility for what is happening under her leadership. He said, in Hollywood, the buck stops at the star's name on the door, not at the producer's level. It would be impossible for her not to know what was happening within her own staff. Meanwhile, the allegations of a toxic work environment were addressed by the show's executive producer, Ed Glavin, Andy Lassner, and Mary Connolly in a statement to BuzzFeed at the time of the outlet's report. We are truly heartbroken and sorry to learn that even one person in our production family has had a negative experience. It is not who we are and not who we strive to be, not the mission Ellen has set for us. The statement explained that the day-to-day responsibility of the show is completely on the producers. We take all this very seriously, and we realize, as many in the world are learning, that we need to do better, are committed to do better, and we will do better, they said. Schiffer believes DeGeneres faces a dangerous period in her career at a critical time in the American experience. Any findings that reveal a toxic workplace would be an apocalyptic ending to her TV career. Now
This is not a surprise. This is something
Yes.
that has for years on message boards. People that have been interns have come up and said, that she was
mean.
just a scumbag to work for. People especially telling when people in the stand-up community have said that she was not an easy person to be on the road with.
There was actually a tweet I saw from Brad Garrett, who you may remember from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Talk about spitting fire.
Yeah, he came out at her pretty hard, and people were saying, well, if you knew, why didn't you say something? You've been a guest on her show multiple times, and you could have said something. One of the shows that I watch on a regular basis is a show called Internet Today. And they said they have friends of theirs that have worked on Ellen. And they're like, yeah, we've heard stories. And that surprises me. I mean, and I guess that shows the level of how a person's persona is very different from how they are.
She took over the Rosie O'Donnell show, right? Like after Rosie had some things that
didn't go well,
at least publicly. And it is, outside of the bullshit shows like what is it, The View and The Talk and all that, it's the number one daytime show in the world. More syndicated, like more
it's more lighthearted than The View and stuff
but
like
we're
that.
talking like worldwide, we're talking like 100 million viewers per day, like more than any other. Like obviously won't get the same ratings that a nighttime show gets because daytime shows don't get those advertiser money. Like you could, like 100 million viewers for daytime is like getting 10 million at night. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's enough that when you basically own 80% of all televisions during the daytime, there's enough power there that as your agent, you can complain to your agent all you want to be like, well, your choices are go on the show or go on nothing.
Oh, actually, just as I was looking on my page for the next story, evidently Ellen did send an apology to her staff. It is very, very long. I don't know whether you want me to read it.
It's not. I've read some of the stuff that was going. Like it's all to try to save face, but it's one of those. I'm sorry. It's basically I'm sorry, but I'm only really sorry that everybody's now found out about it.
Yeah, like this is something that should have been addressed immediately by her. Obviously, you shouldn't be a piece of shit to begin with, which it sucks because Ellen has fostered this brand, in my opinion, and probably it's not far off to say many people's opinion. She appeals to that very general, very soccer mom, very daytime TV audience. She always does huge kind of giveways. She always does public interest stories.
You know what it is? It's all fluff pieces. There's never anything hard hitting. Where that's one thing Rosie would sometimes ask things that got people uncomfortable, which is I kind of liked her more back in the day because she was a little against the grain. And then, whether or not she worked out with the network or not is one thing. But I always felt that when Ellen came on, it was like the most cookie cutter, whitewashing bullshit, soap opera audience kind of show. Like it's there for the lowest common denominator. And then people watch the show and go on the show in hopes they get free shit, not because it's a good show.
I don't know. I would disagree with you because I've seen her have some fun in her interview. Her show is very fun. It's very lighthearted.
It's inane and it's
an experience.
It's soul crushing to be on that show. I've seen episodes. It's like everybody on that show has to be so phony.
I don't know. I've seen a few of the people who are just everyday people brought on. They seem like they're having fun. I mean,
they seem like they'd be having more fun on the Tonight Show than they would be on that show.
I don't know. I mean, again, it all comes down to the presentation. I think Jimmy Fallon would be a fun guy to actually hang out with. Ellen, I don't get the same vibe. I have a feeling once you walk off the stage, that's it.
Has anybody ever had a good thing to say about her?
You know what? Publicly, I don't know. I mean, other than when she gives away prizes to needy families and stuff like that.
She was a
it's all
pioneer
brand stuff
in her coming out publicly.
Yes.
When she did. So I almost feel like people gave her a pass for 20 years because she was so brave. She did a lot for that community at the time that it's almost the situation of this person's a bad person, but they did something really good for our community, so we should just turn a blind eye.
Yeah, like I had no idea all these allegations against her were building up.
And I feel like almost like people didn't come out and say anything, because then they would have been hit as being like they would have thought, people would have said, oh, you have an agenda against her because she's openly gay or something. And it's like, and it almost feels like she's used that as like a shield. And it's like, no, you should be judged on your behavior. And now it's finally coming out that, hey, you're a scumbag.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have power, if you have influence, if you have the reputation to do good in the world, do it. And arguably, she has done that, but she also has that power to where
the rule of when you interview her, you can't look her in the eye.
I've never heard that.
That was in the Brad Garrett article. Other people were coming out that went on her show that interviewed her for an Australian television show, and one of the conditions was don't look directly at her while you ask the questions.
Weird.
And they said it was one of the weirdest requests they've ever had as a television show.
Yeah, I can't say in my career I've ever run across anything too strange like that. Definitely not of that caliber.
Like that's very like
Rolling Stones ish,
diva ish, like no brown M&Ms.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I know people like Ariana Grande and other big pop stars have really weird requests, but
they're writers. But it's the situation of, you're a TV host, you're not even a stand-up comedian anymore, because you haven't written any of your own material in 25 years.
Didn't she have like a Netflix special a couple years ago?
Oh, you think she wrote? Good. You think she wrote anything of that?
Maybe a little. I don't know.
Like it's the situation where like you see all those articles coming out and they talk about like the writers' room. She didn't even meet the writers. She would just get her script and go with it. Whereas you had somebody like Letterman, who they had his writers, but he would sit with the writers and they'd work through it. And that's usually what a host does, is they work out the jokes and they work it out so that it sounds like it's coming from them. And you like the head writer works with the host, and you see all these articles coming out about her, and she's like, no, she goes to the office, won't make eye contact, doesn't say hi to anybody, goes to her room. You're not supposed to disturb her. And it's like, what are you, like, queen shit?
I mean, yeah, obviously don't be a jerk. Hopefully the staff and the crew that work over there will get treated better.
Yeah. And ultimately this, to anybody that has, been on the internet, this is not a surprise, but the depth of how the behavior was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
People knew she was moody basically for years, but they didn't realize that it extended this deep.
Yeah. So moving on to our next story, this one came as a bit of a surprise. I saw it on Twitter first, and then it got confirmed by Variety.com. Netflix and Ubisoft have teamed up for an anime series adaptation of video game Splinter Cell, Variety has learned. Derek Kolstad, best known for his work writing the John Wick film franchise, will serve as writer and executive producer on the series. According to sources, the series has received a 2-season, 16-episode order at the streaming service. Netflix, Ubisoft, and reps for Kolstad declined to comment on specifics of the deal. The first Splinter Cell game was released in 2002 to near universal acclaim from critics and massive sales. The game follows former U.S. Navy SEAL Sam Fisher after he's recruited by the NSA to work for a mysterious third echelon division within the agency. The game sees Fisher engage in a number of Black Ops missions employing stealth and military tactics. The game has spawned 6 sequels as well as a series of novels. A Splinter Cell film has been in the works for years now. Tom Hardy has been attached to star as Fisher going back to 2012, though the project is currently considered inactive. Kolstad has worked on all 3 John Wick films that have been produced to date, with the films have grossing over $584 million combined worldwide. Kolstad's other recent credits include co-creating the Quibi series Die Hard, starring Kevin Hart and John Travolta. He also worked on the Falcon and Winter Soldier series at Disney+, and as the feature Nobody at Universal. The film is set to be released with it next year, while Falcon and Winter Soldier is expected to debut later on this year. Blah, 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 blah. Splinter Cell is not the first series that will see the Ubisoft team up with a streamer. The company also produced the Apple TV series Mythic Quest that hails from Rob, I can't pronounce this guy's last name.
The dude from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, so all the people, some people from Always Sunny.
We still have to watch. It looked good from the trailer.
Yeah, it got picked up for a second season, so we'll check that out.
So saying that, most people are saying it probably wasn't going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So obviously it had some legs.
And then the other Ubisoft thing we've seen before was Assassin's Creed, which came out back in 2016, which I never did get around to seeing. So Splinter Cell, I think it's obviously, if it's written by the John Wick guy, that should be pretty neat. If it is going to happen in the world of Splinter Cell, Michael Ironside, if you're feeling up to it.
Yeah, it's voice acted. I mean, it's not out of the realm. I don't know if he still lives in Toronto or somewhere, but if he does, there's going to be places he can record.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him come back to the role. I'd like to see where it's going to take place in the timeline. My guess is it'll completely disregard the stuff and start from scratch, which is fine because Castlevania did the same thing.
I was going to say, did it say how many episodes?
16 episodes across 2 seasons, so it'll be like 8 episodes a season.
That's not too much for him to record.
Yeah.
Or how about that? Like this, it doesn't give much about the plot, right?
No, none.
So how about what if this is a prequel where it has a young version of him? So that so in the episodes, it's a young version of the character with a different voice actor. And what if you had Michael Ironside narrate it as if it's going into his past?
Maybe, because although it does mention third echelon, which Sam enters into his career pretty late on, like he's already in his 40s by the time he enters third echelon, because he's nearing retirement age.
They could do flashbacks.
Yeah, they very easily could do flashbacks. And if they did do that, I'd bring back the guy who voiced him in Splinter Cell Blacklist.
And just have, like, I was thinking, like, if you really, really wanted him involved, but maybe he wasn't healthy enough or up to the task, have him be a narrator.
Yeah, like there are ways to do this effectively. I mean, Castlevania has shown video game anime adaptations produced by Netflix can be fucking fantastic. Now,
even their first party ones that are made to look like anime, like the Voltron one,
are really good.
Fantastic animation quality and just overall. This, I have only played bits and pieces, like few minutes here and there, and watched you play. This might be, I'm like the ideal person. This would be like an introduction for the entire franchise to me.
Yeah, like I think you'd really enjoy it. Like the Splinter Cell games, my favorite one is Blacklist, which a lot of people didn't like because of the voice acting. I love the gameplay. Is that the
one I watched you where you were like trying to take over a boat or something? Or was
and I was really fucking stealthy with it.
Yeah. And you were getting mad because you kept dying at first because it had been so long since you played.
Yeah, because I was
and then you got your controls down. You're like, now I remember how to do this, and you were smoking it.
Oh my god! The other one I really liked was a game that was in development hell for a long time. It was called Splinter Cell Conviction. Like it had several false restarts, and then once they got it down pat, it was fucking fantastic.
Well, I purchased for was it PS3? Was it Double Helix or some title like that, or
Double Agent?
Double Agent, yeah, that one. And it would not play. You know why? I had a Super Slim, and there was a revision to the firmware on the system that would brick the system, and you'd have to unplug it from the wall every time you turned the game on. It was a broken thing. They never patched it.
Weird.
It's still, to this day, you cannot play it on there, if you get the disc version. Maybe if you download a digital copy. But, yeah, it would not play. I returned it to EB Games, and they said, oh, you have a Slim or a Super Slim? Yeah, sorry, that game doesn't work. That's why it's $3.
Huh.
I'm like, what? It only works on one version of the system, and you're still trying to sell it? And they're like, it's corporate. So that was going to be my introduction. Then they had a trilogy, right? Of like and I was going to play that, and I was like, I'll just wait till that comes out on a new system, and it just never has.
Yeah, like I was really hoping we'd see a Splinter Cell game on the next gen consoles like Xbox One and PS4, and there was rumors for years. For years, never happened.
I have Game Pass Ultimate now. So I'm considering, because they made the old ones backwards compatible. I'm just not sure if I don't think they're part. Are they part of Game Pass, or are they just part of the backwards compatible system or the version? Because if they are, it's like free to download and play the original trilogy. I'll do that, because that was like the last thing that they announced before they abandoned the Xbox One. The backwards compatibility program. They said like that last batch of releases were all the Splinter Cell games.
They are an amazing playthrough. I really recommend you do take a chance. Like, they are an older game. Chaos Theory, I think, or what was, I can't remember.
Wasn't there one like Pandora Tomorrow or something?
Pandora Tomorrow is really unforgiving, but it's really good. Like, there are points where you can't get spotted. You do, mission ends, and you got to restart.
I think it's time for them to do a 4K remaster trilogy of those or collection, just like it's time to do that with the Prince of Persia titles.
Yes, absolutely. So, final story this week. This will be a bit of a big one. So, strap in, folks.
Oh boy.
So, Microsoft, we want to buy TikTok after a chat with Trump. This story comes courtesy of TMZ, but I've seen it reported by other outlets as well. So, TikTok might become an American-owned company on the heels of the Trump administration's security concerns about the app if Microsoft can get a deal done. The software behemoth went public Sunday with its plans announcing it was pursuing to purchase TikTok from its parent company ByteDance, and Microsoft CEO has already had a chat with President Trump about the potential deal. It seems they're pretty eager to please the prez too, saying Microsoft fully appreciates the importance of addressing the president's concerns. It is committed to acquiring TikTok subject to a complete security review and providing proper economic benefits to the United States, including the United States Treasury. In other words, they're going to make sure they put America first here, both on the security side and the economic side. Music to the administration's ears, no doubt. Though there's more. Microsoft says it's planning to complete their discussions with the China-run TikTok team no later than September 15th. And in the meantime, they'll continue to brief Uncle Sam and company on where they stand. It sounds like the feds are on board with this. Remember, last week, Trump said he was considering banning TikTok from the United States as early as Saturday, outright, but he also said they were looking at alternatives, Microsoft included, apparently. One last thing on how Microsoft plans to address Trump's security concerns. They say, along with other measures, their crack team will ensure that all private data of American TikTok users is transferred, and anything still out there being stored in foreign servers will be deleted. No word on a price tag yet, but the bottom line here, all the viral TikTokers out there, probably safe for now and still have a home. Woo!
Okay, as far as privacy concerns are, if you've used TikTok, you're done. You've already got all your information.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with. And it's the bigger issue is I am a TikTok user that is using it to find hilarious, ridiculous, over the top videos. It's like, for me, it's like the dark side of Vine all over again, where it's like, hey, let's watch somebody, on a skateboard fly up in the air and fall to the ground and break their arm. I'm like, holy crap, that's a really funny 5-second video I'll watch. Most people that are on there, though, it can be broken down into two categories. Old people that really shouldn't be on there and they're weird. Like, it's like watching, it's like when you watch like a grandparent figure out how to use YouTube, but they happen to use TikTok, and you're like, why are you trying to use this? And two, so one, that category, you got people that really have no idea how to protect their privacy online anyway, with the elderly. And two, the intended market is like 13 to 24-year-olds to like dance and sing songs. And the key word there is 13 is the lower end of the spectrum of what they want on there. So they're gathering information in China on minors.
I don't think that's entirely everything they're gathering because of TikTok's API, as I understand it. They're also able to log keystrokes. They can see
absolutely. But where America's really perking up over this is the fact that it's collecting all this information on people underage. Keystrokes information on people's phones. It's a lot of minors information being collected as well as adults. And they say it's not stored in China, but it is. Like, I mean, they're getting copies of that information and using it for demographic purposes. Or the fear that they've publicly said is they're afraid they're going to use it to mount cyber attacks or sway public consciousness and all this sort of stuff. So I see it and I'm like, okay, if it were to just end and shut down, I wouldn't really care. Like, I view it as something funny, but there are a lot of people that consume a lot of their media on there to the point where you had movie studios, television companies, gaming studios where remember at the beginning of the Summer Games Fest, how they were like, follow us on TikTok for exclusive videos.
Yep. And
that was starting.
Well, also don't forget that the the K-pop stans flooded TikTok and mounted an effective rally against Trump in Oklahoma by reserving tickets to his rally. So TikTok has been weaponized, politicized, which I guess it already has been, because like any internet platform, it can be. I have no feelings about it one way or the other. When I heard about what TikTok could gain access to, like very early on, I'm like, yep, nope. And I'm never going to use it. So,
I mean, here's the thing, I use it, but I also don't, like I wouldn't use it on an Apple phone because you're kind of locked down from a lot of seeing what the apps are doing. But on an Android phone, like you can lock down what it has access to.
I don't know. I read a security consultant, I think from Cambridge University, who said the Android version's a little more vulnerable. The security on the Apple is a little bit better, not by much.
But by default, I mean, but if you've rooted your phone, like, okay, if you're somebody in the sense of me, where I'm a really tech savvy guy, I can lock down a lot of stuff. But the average user is going to enable everything.
Yes. So at the end of the day, keep an eye on this. Do your research. There are some posts on Reddit by security researchers who've done pretty extensive work, and they source their studies and everything. So the information is out there. So enjoy your flossing for now, I guess, before Uncle Sam owns it. So,
and again, yeah, I guess commenting on what they're doing there, this isn't the first time that the U.S. has exercised. There's these weird international laws that they developed years ago about the internet, where they can take ownership of the servers, which I found kind of strange that a foreign power could take ownership of somebody else's app by force. But it has something to do with their trade agreements, which we're not going to get into because it's how convoluted the discussion was on it.
Yeah.
But it has happened in the past where the American government deemed something a security threat and they took ownership of the app. So in doing so, people are like, why would you give it to Microsoft or Facebook or anybody? I'd rather them give it to Microsoft than give it to Facebook. And if Microsoft has it, it's like, I guess, be happy that you're dealing with the devil you know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, they'll use your demographic information, but it's probably not going to be used for something catastrophic like cyber warfare. So
yeah. So yikes. As I've been saying a lot this episode. So anyway, we have rambled on long enough for the news. So we're going to take a small break here on This Week in Geek, and we're going to give you our main feature for our review episode, or main whatever. We're going to take a look.
We're getting back to the swing of things, so we're going to flub up here.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty, folks. So anyway, we're going to take a look at the Fairy Tale RPG that Alex took a look at during our summer vacation. So we will be back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman, joined with Alex the producer. We'll be back right after this.
During the lockdown/pandemic, I've been scrambling trying to find programming, things that I've wanted to catch up on, especially when it comes to TV shows, or in this case, anime, to fill the void of time when I'm bored, or have things on in the background when I'm, writing emails. And in this case, it coincided with hearing about a traditional Japanese JRPG that was going to be coming out based on the popular anime and manga series Fairy Tale. And I had heard about it in the past, and especially since I've been watching Black Clover, and they're like, yeah, it's like a happier, more go-lucky version of that. And I went, okay, I'll check it out. And I thought, okay, well, I've got about a month, a few weeks at least, until the game was coming out. And I was told, like, yeah, you're probably going to get a review copy early to check out. And I went, sure, okay, challenge accepted. Let's watch as much as I can. So in about a week, I watched all 328 episodes, the 2 movies, and I think a couple of the OVA episodes. And I was pretty enthralled. Like I was watching a lot of episodes. It was basically on from the time I got up in the morning to the time I went to bed. It was on in the background, or I was paying attention at least 75% of the time, where I'd go back and rewind. And I got really enthralled with it. I thought it was a really fun series, and you can see where it has its ebbs and flows and its ups and downs, and it has all the standard tropes of anime. And Just kudos to the voice acting team that they put together to do the English dub, because it's really feels lively. Now, fast forward, I complete it, and my review copy of the game comes in. I got the PS4 version. It's also available on the Switch. Now, you're probably not going to see much of a difference between them, because the engine and the graphics will scale very well. It is, graphically, it's like a cel-shaded PS2 game. Is probably the best way I can describe it. It's an old school RPG in that it has all the mechanics that you'd want from a standard turn-based system. It has a lot of the in-depth character progression, like going on missions with people can raise your I guess, connection rates and your relationship status up to 3 levels, which add extra little bonuses to when you're fighting to give you a little bit better attacks and chain combos. And there's little dialogues in between. The only downside I can say to this game, other than, a couple things that would be nitpicking, is there is no English dub. So for someone like myself, where I got used to all the characters in the show, it was a little jarring. It took me out of it a bit, because the voice acting, while good in Japanese, a lot of the voices sounded similar. And that's a gripe I have with a lot of anime. Like, it takes a really wonderful cast to give it a diverse sounding feel to it, and a lot of the voices sounded samey, and that's just my personal gripe. So I found myself fast forwarding or not listening to dialogue and mostly just reading the subtitles as I went, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Like, it would have been nice to have included a dub of the cast, because it's not like absolutely everything has talking, but all the cutscenes, or even like the battle animations of voices, you figure they could have done something there. And who knows, maybe in the future, Koei Tecmo will. Now, as far as where the game takes place, it is partway through. So after the first couple of seasons, it takes place after the traditional anime trope of the fast forward in time several years. So this takes place in that part and leads up to everything before the last season or 2 of the show, where the final arcs start to happen. So it's an RPG that takes place in the middle. So if you're somebody who's new to the series and completely never seen anything before, it does give you background in that it starts in the middle of a climactic battle, and then when you come out of that battle and time is skipped forward, you can go through your encyclopedia, and it gives a background on everything that's happened up to that point in text form. So it definitely helps if you are somebody familiar with the first, let's say, third of the series. And then you could potentially just play this, and it plays through the plot points of what happens in that middle part of the show. Although there's some deviations. There are characters that are secondary, tertiary, and somewhat substantial that are just flat out not in the game. Like the fairy tale guild itself feels like it's shrunk substantially, I guess, to fit with the game's assets and what they wanted. They kept only the super necessary important people to what's happening with the plot. A couple characters in it that were essential to the story, that were in the party during certain events, are not playable, and they just sort of are there. There's a couple of them where I'm like, why are you even here? Because they don't actually... Like, they're there, you can interact with them and talk to them, but they don't do anything for the game. So that was a little odd and a little jarring, but I can see what they were doing. This is it's like a really dressed up budget title that is super fun to play. It has a good battle system. It has a pretty good gameplay loop. The world's not as big as you would expect. It's like, this is what you would have expected from like a PS1, PS2, GameCube era game that wasn't like a super huge 100-hour game. You can basically 100% complete the game in about 36 to 40 hours. I was able to beat the game in about 30, and it took another 6 or so to get most of the collectibles. I'm missing 2 things that I believe I cannot get unless I do a second playthrough, because in one of the final dungeons, as I was running around, I was getting low on items, and I really couldn't afford to try to heal in battle or get through certain areas, and I think I might have missed 2 things. And getting those two things would pop my final trophy as well as, complete my encyclopedia in the game. So I'll have to, when a guide comes out eventually, look and see if I did miss those two items. Just two little collectibles that were hidden throughout the game. Sort of like in Dragon Quest when you can collect rare coins or like tiny medals. It's like that. So as far as music goes, the audio direction is good. The voice acting it's hit or miss with me because I wasn't a big fan of the Japanese original dub of the show or the game. But as far as getting the feel down of Fairy Tail, like the tone is right spot on. As far as controls go, your face buttons are on the controller, like your cross, square, triangle, circle, are all mapped to different things. So it's not like you have to go up and down in a menu to select your commands. It's like square is attack, cross is magic. I'll say this, there's really no reason to ever have attack even in the game because it does so little damage. You're almost exclusively always using magic, and you almost never run out because as soon as you exit the dungeon or wherever you are, you go to town, you're automatically healed to full health. So I found myself using attack a singular time ever in the entire game, and it was at the beginning of the game, and I went, well, this is weak and useless. I almost feel like it was there just because they're like, hey, well, it's possible you could run out of mana. Not really. I never encountered a spot ever where I truly ran out once throughout the entire game. I blocked more than anything, because sometimes blocking it around, you'll recover some mana. As you progress, you'll unlock extra features like being able to combine magic attacks into one, being able to unleash like an all-out party attack that you can stack to do more and more damage over and over and over and over and over again. Up to, I got 35 rounds of attacks in a go, and then it finally failed on me and I couldn't continue, but I did like 1.5 million damage. To give you an idea, most attacks in the game until post-game, you're doing roughly 1,000, maybe up to 3,000 damage per attack. So imagine, like, that's how devastating it can get. There's areas where you can break the environment down to unlock new pathways, and that how you do that is doing over damage, which is stacking damage to do, it'll say like you have to do 30,000 damage or 50,000 to in one single round, and that will break down this area and you can unlock this treasure chest or another pathway, or it'll let you go to a secret boss or something to that extent. Everything is handled through the hub town that you're in Magnolia, and then occasionally when you go to do like there's a part in the game and in the show where you end up going to a tournament, that's in another town, and that's where the only loading screen of the game shows up. It's where it like reloads your assets, and it's funny. That's where I say it looks like a PS1, PS2, GameCube, because it pops up on screen with like a static image with a loading screen running across the bottom, and I was like, whoa, I haven't seen that in a while. But it's only there for like, it was like 5-10 seconds, but it made me laugh because it's every time you go between the two towns, it'll do that. Nowhere else. Once you're in that town, if you load to any other location on the main map, it'll just go right in. You're in like 1 second. But the second you want to go back to the other town, it has to reload all the town assets. So it's kind of funny. I had no issues with any repetition in battle. It was fun. There's a couple areas, a couple of the dungeons, which are mountains, and they're snowy peaked mountains. Their maps are twisty and turny, and I got really annoyed with how many times I had to go there and take like 15-20 minutes to run up the top of the map just to talk to one person, then to exit, and when you come back in, have to start at the bottom again and work your way all the way up. So that was a bit of busy work. Everything else seemed to be laid out really well. The game, for getting 40 hours out of it, it's not a very large and expansive game with tons and tons of environments. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think there's 8 on the main map that are like traversal dungeons or areas where you can grind to get your levels up, which grinding wasn't a big issue. As you progress, you just sort of level up naturally. Doing quests for people on the board will level up your party, as well as leveling up your guild status. And the point of the game is to get into an A or an S class status. And when you do so, when you become number 1, you get trophies, obviously, but it unlocks more individual missions you can do, which unlock more things and unlock more storylines and more companions. You can actually get more people to your party if you level up and do more of those guild missions, especially if you start doing that near the end of the game. And then post end game, you're able to get like the game sort of ends, and I was like, oh, that's it. It's not going into the end of the actual anime. It sort of ends after a major pivotal point, and you can then recruit a couple more characters to do some final missions that are more difficult. And it leaves itself a little open-ended in that they can add more missions later through DLC, or they could actually add, they could do an entire another game that just carries this information forward if they chose to. And I'd be fine with that. There is no New Game Plus. So once you save and you load, you're there. So if you start over, you're just starting over from scratch. It does give you the option at the beginning of the game. It suggests, would you like to try it on easy? Before you even do anything, it says that. And trying it on easy, I did it at the beginning, but it was almost too easy. It's like, this is just to enjoy the story, and it's basically impossible to die. Now, if you try it on normal, it's really well balanced, and there's a hard mode, which I haven't tried yet, but there doesn't seem to be any incentive for me to do so, because I enjoy the challenge of the game as is on normal. They might add some more stuff, post-game to it, because a lot of these games end up doing that. There isn't any, microtransactions or DLC. You buy the game, you get the game, it has the whole game in it. You're getting roughly 40 hours or so of upper-end, high-quality JRPG goodness, if not AAA quality, what we're used to in this day and age. It would be a really good game to play on the Switch. I enjoyed it on the PS4, very much so. Had a really good time with it, but I almost feel like it would work even better on the Switch because of the portability of it and the way the graphics are like a cel-shaded anime. It would hold up well, and it would be easy to, just carry on with, if you have to go on the bus or if you're traveling, or even if you're just playing from bed for an hour or two, do a couple missions. I think you'd have a pretty good time doing it that way. And I really hope that, Koei Tecmo maybe they have more licenses, more of these kind of, shonen anime shows. If they start adapting more into these, pretty decent caliber JRPGs instead of what you see from a lot of other companies where they end up being just arena battle games. And that kind of comes across as bland and boring. This seemed to have a lot more heart put into it. And I think it's definitely worth the money you're going to put out for it if you're a big fan of the series. If you're somebody who's new to it, but you love old school JRPGs, it might be one to check out as well.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
All right, my friends across the interwebs and wherever you may be listening this afternoon, this evening, or whenever you are in this space and time dimension, we're going to take a look at TWIG's weird news, the strange, the fucked up things that happened across planet Earth this past week. And we're going to start things off in the National Basketball Association, as they are in hot water as an NBA player went to a strip club, and it didn't end too well for him. So LA Clippers guard Lou Williams was photographed at Magic City Gentlemen's Club. Big deal, you figure, right? An NBA player is facing a quarantine for 10 days after visiting a strip club for dinner. Los Angeles Clippers guard Lou Williams was photographed Thursday night at Magic City Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta and later told NBA investigators that he dropped there for a quick bite to eat. CBS reports rapper Jack Harlow posted a pic of him and Williams at the club, then pulled from Instagram and tweeted Friday, "This was an old pic of me and Lou. I was just reminiscing because I miss him." The tweet came down too. ESPN notes the photo shows William wearing an NBA mask as he held a drink at the club. Seems Williams went to the viewing of a family friend in the early evening, a pre-approved absence from the team, and then visited Magic City. Asking any of my teammates what's my favorite restaurant in Atlanta, he tweeted Friday, "Ain't nobody partying, chill out, lol. Mask on, in, out." Yahoo Sports notes that Williams has tweeted about his love of Magic City food before and even has an item named after him on the menu. But the NBA still hit him with a 10-day quarantine, meaning he'll miss the team's first two seeding games. He's back there, I can tell you that much, said Clippers coach Doc Rivers on Saturday. Obviously, those got out, and it's not something we didn't enjoy seeing or and it goes on. I heard a little bit more about this. Evidently, this Magic City Gentlemen's Club is renowned for its chicken wings. So,
it's funny. You always hear about that. It's like, man, you got to go for the breakfast buffet.
The most amazing food. I actually went to a strip club in Dallas. I had a really, really good steak there. I was quite impressed.
My question is there a correlation between the quality of the food and the quality of the entertainment? Like, does the food quality suffer when they realize they don't have to serve good food?
There was a strip club in Niagara Falls that served food, and its entertainment was of, I'd say, average to a little bit above average. The food was okay. You went more for the entertainment quality, and the barkers were a lot of fun too.
I've never been. I had friends that went. It was just never my jam. I was like, why am I going to waste money on that? It was just never my thing. But when I was in grade 9, and we still had OAC, like grade 13 at school, there was 2.5 blocks away a strip club, which was hilarious from the high school because I was a downtown core school, and a lot of the kids that were kids, I guess they're adults, they're 19, right? Age of majority. They would go because they said the food was really good. So they, like you said, they would go and have like burgers and stuff at the strip club. And eventually the city shut down the strip club completely. They had an ordinance or something done because it was too close to residential like areas and schools. And I was like, well, why'd they shut down? It's like, oh yeah, it was found out that like sometimes the teachers would go there for the lunches too. And sometimes some of the grade 13 girls would be there on amateur day. They're like, that's not okay. So so they shut down because they're like, ethically, this is not right. We shouldn't have this too close to the school, especially when students are of the age that they could be partaking in it. So they shut that down in like 2001. And I just remember laughing my head off. I'm like, wait, they shut down because girls from our school were going there and getting jobs? And they're like, yep.
Oh,
and they thought it was inappropriate to be that close to where anybody could go to.
Yeah, probably not the best idea.
And then the only other strip club in town moved from also in the downtown core to like way out in the boonies. And it was like, yeah, it's probably for a good, for good as well. Because as the residential areas expanded, there are a lot of people in the downtown core, and they were trying to revitalize the downtown to make it more like, hey, we're like a fancy futuristic, like urban renewal thing. And it's like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have a couple strip clubs within like a 5-minute walk of the high schools.
Yeah, probably not a cool idea. So Lou Williams, I hope you've learned your lessons, and I hope those chicken wings are worth it, because that probably cost you a fair chunk. So moving on to my next story, and actually continuing with sports, oddly enough. So one of my new favorite teams, simply because I enjoy their mascot immensely, is Gritty. So the Philadelphia Flyers have put up a vaguely threatening billboard in downtown Toronto. The NHL teams may be stuck in quarantine, but at least they're in good spirits. At least that's what this kind of creepy but also very funny billboard that the Philadelphia Flyers have put up in Toronto would suggest. If they're making vaguely threatening jokes in the form of billboards, they're probably doing all right. Anyway, for those of you who aren't Flyers fans, and why would you be? We're all Leafs fans here, thank you very much. The team's mascot is a large orange thing called Gritty, and the billboard Gritty can be spotted with large googly eyes next to the words, "Every shot you take, every save you make, I'll be watching you." And it's Gritty peeking out from like a ripped billboard, and he's just leering over this like area. So
that's a good healthy rivalry jab right there.
It really is. So the Gritty billboard can be spotted in the heart of downtown Toronto, so that's not cheap. It's right by the Scotiabank Arena, which is where all the recent games have been taking place.
Well, you know what? It's probably cheap enough right now with advertising, right? It's not like the advertising revenue is the same as when the roads were all packed.
Yeah. So it's right by Scotiabank Arena, where all the recent games have been taking place, which was, of course, probably the whole point. The words on the billboard were inspired by the Police hit song, "Every Breath You Take." And while we got to give it to the Flyers for their creativity, considering their mascot was likely not one of the people included in their limited quarantine capacity. So let us know if you spot Gritty taunts while you're out and about in Toronto. As for a little playful competition goes, their billboard is a very funny way to go. We're still rooting for the Leafs, though, which evidently the NHL playoffs are happening right now, and I sure as fuck didn't know.
I didn't know sports. I heard baseball had started.
Oh boy, let me tell you about that. So several players have tested players and coaches. Several games have been called off. One of the players who caught it early on has lung and heart damage, so he's out for the rest of the season. Like, it's almost like you should have just not done baseball. But hey, what the fuck do I know? I'm just a podcast host.
Like, I know that when they were doing soccer in Europe, they were recording it, in front of no audience, but they were piping in like crowd noise, and apparently it made it like tolerable. I mean, it's soccer, so it's incredibly boring to watch, and anybody that wants to argue can come at me, bro. Like, soccer is not even a fun sport to play, and that's just not me being a fat guy saying that. That it's just there's not a whole lot that happens. You get like 2 goals in the entire game, so it's not for me. It's a drinking party. It's like football. Football has a little more action, but it's like it's there to be a party game. Like, you have your friends over and family, and you're all cheering, and you're not really paying super close attention. But like, whereas. And even baseball has a bit of that. I would say hockey and basketball are way more exciting. And I'm not a sports guy, simply because there's a lot happening and a lot of action. So it's funny to me that they're like, hey, baseball. It's like, really, baseball? Baseball's not even that exciting anyway. So why'd you have to bring that one back? It'll be interesting to see how much they foul up the football return.
Oh yeah. If it even happens at this point.
There's like $1 trillion riding on it. It's going to happen no matter how many people get sick.
Gotta love being American. So anyway, moving on to my next story. And this one, I'm very interested to follow to see how this turns out. And as you guys know, big fan of aliens, big believer in the unknown. So this story comes courtesy of yahoo.com, and it's been collaborated with several other major outlets in the United States. So a consultant for the Pentagon's UFO program is speaking out about retrievals from, in his own words, off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Eric W. Davis, an astrophysicist who worked as a subcontractor and then consultant for the Pentagon's UFO program since 2007, told the New York Times he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March about alleged off-world vehicles. He also gave classified briefings on the retrievals of unexplained objects to staff members of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee last October. Davis said that in some cases he had failed to determine the source of recovered materials, leading him to conclude, we couldn't make it ourselves. Though the Pentagon had said it had disbanded a program to investigate unidentified flying objects, the Times reported that investigations into encounters between military pilots and unidentified aerial vehicles continued under a renamed program, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, inside the Office of Naval Intelligence. While the program is not classified, it deals with classified matters. A Senate committee report last month said the program was the standardized collection and reporting on sightings of unexplained aerial vehicles. The program was ordered... let me see. I lost my place. The program was ordered to report on at least some of its findings to the public within 180 days after the passing of the Intelligence Authorization Act. The Pentagon's program previous director, Luis Elizondo, a former military intelligence official who had resigned in October 2017 after 10 years with the program, said he is convinced that objects of undetermined origins have crashed on Earth with materials retrieved for study. Elizondo's belief is shared by a group of former government officials as well as scientists and security officials, all of whom cannot present physical proof. However, some previously unexplained incidents do have earthly explanations. An astrophysicist stressed that even those lacking explanations are not necessarily caused by extraterrestrial oddities. While Harry Reid, a former Senate Majority Leader who has been involved with the effort, told the Times he hopes the program will seek evidence of other worldly vehicles, the program's main objective is to uncover whether other nations are using breakout aviation technology that may threaten the U.S. In either case, Reid says it is extremely important that information about the discovery of physical materials or retrieved craft come out. Acting chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Marco Rubio, said earlier this month that he is principally concerned about reports of unidentified aircraft over American military bases. He says it is in the government's interest to find out to find the responsible party, expressing concern that China or Russia could have made some technological leap and allow them to conduct this sort of activity. While Rubio said some unidentified aerial vehicles over U.S. bases may have featured technologies not in use in America, he also said maybe there's a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find that out. So this strikes me as something important, and I say this because it's being reported by major outlets, not just as here's a casual ha-ha story. This is being reported to Senate committees. Stuff like this is being declassified, and Trump said very early on in his presidency, I'm going to talk about UFOs more and more, and this opinion right this second is probably speculation, but maybe if he declassified a bunch of UFO shit, that would distract from what the hell's going on right now. So if some information comes out about unidentified aerial stuff or off-world vehicles, I kind of wonder how the public would perceive that, because there's so much happening right now. It could just get buried in the news cycle.
That's very true.
I mean, it's strange to think about all these defense contractors, people who have reputations. And think about this, people who work in these highly academic fields. I can imagine jobs and reputation is of paramount importance, where you have to maintain a certain level of credibility to even get picked up for certain things. So if you go out and talk to the New York Times and say, yeah, we've recovered off-world vehicles, stuff we couldn't have made ourselves, that's going to make you look like a crackpot. You better have something to back it up. And if you're briefing the Senate Intelligence Committee, that says something. And there's obviously been multiple instances of the U.S. government investigating things like Project Moondust, I think was the name of one, Project Blue Book in the 1960s and 50s, with these other task force that have been going on, with the Office of Naval Intelligence. There's something there. And I would wonder if someday, and I wonder if it's going to happen soon, if some government official just said, ladies and gentlemen, we have an announcement, and it's going to be very quiet, very low key. It's not going to be like CNN where they come out and just explain it, but it's going to be very quiet, and it's going to be, ladies and gentlemen, we are not alone. And that's
cool.
all. And that's all it's going to be. They're not going to show things. They're not going to want people panicking. They're just going to say we are not alone, and they're just going to leave it at that. It's going to be very quiet, because the space program has picked up in recent years. We are seeing more and more exoplanets discovered every day. We are seeing more and more things discovered in the depth of space. We've had more stuff discovered in space in the last couple years than I can think of in the last decade. I mean, we photographed our first black hole in the last 3 years. I think last year it was. We're discovering the way new physics work. There is a distinct possibility something's out there. And I had this discussion on my Facebook. I think I posted this article, and my friend Ryan, I think that was my friend who posted it. He's like, I don't know what to think. And I always think back to the Fermi paradox. And that's always, and it basically boils down to, if we are alone in the universe, that thought is terrifying. If we are not alone in the universe, that thought is equally terrifying. And I said to him, are we so arrogant to think that we are special in the whole of space, in the whole of existence, that we are the only ones out here? Now, whether we are being visited by these people, I can't tell you. I don't know. Because they could be, like, you're telling me ET is going to travel thousands of light years to come shove a probe up my ass? I don't know. But to think there's no intelligent life anywhere in the entire universe, that's pretty fucking arrogant to think. So I leave it to you, the Twig listeners. The government's talking about it. We've seen footage that cannot be explained. And you'd have to wonder what's going to happen with the next generation of war technology. Is it going to have some strange ability that we've never seen before? So, I don't know, Alex. I guess your brief thoughts on this.
Wow. I
mean, it definitely gives you something to think about now that governments are talking about it.
They're talking about it, but I'm still of the belief that if there was anything concrete, it would have leaked by now.
Yeah, like unless something major happens, it's always going to be that question. But I really do wonder if we're going to have some sort of a breakthrough in the next 5 to 10 years. Like something is going to be discovered. If it's even on the microbial level, we're going to see something.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So that's, I don't really have much more I can say other than something's fishy.
Yeah. So anyway, last story. This one's a little more lighthearted, a little less philosophical. So this one comes courtesy of Anime News Network, and I've actually been following this story on Twitter because this is a trip, let me tell you. So Florida Congress candidate K.W. Miller warned his nearly 40,000 Twitter followers of the great deal of anime porn that exists on the internet. The independent party candidate for Florida's 18th district pointed to Akira Toriyama's and Toei Animation's Dragon Ball Z as one of the top issues, and I'm going to read his tweet. They are now introducing a great deal of anime porn into the internet matrix. Dragon Ball Z is one of the top issues here. They are sexualizing cartoon characters to push a depraved agenda on our kids. What's next? Where will it end? Dragon Ball Z is an anime targeted at children. It does not contain erotic content, though websites would tell you different. Miller's Twitter account includes a swath of alarmist rhetoric, including accusations that Twitter's guilty of interfering with a federal election, that conservative politicians in Florida needs to seek Miller's endorsement of campaign success, that he has better hair than President Trump, and that all Hollywood actors are pedophiles. Florida's 18th congressional district is located in the southeastern part of the state that includes St. Lucie, I think it is, Martin counties, part of Palm Beach County. Republican Brian Mass is the district's current representative. Democrats Pam Keith and Oz Vasquez are on the ballot in this for the area's Democratic Party, set for August 18th to decide which will run against Mass and Miller in the general election on November 3rd. This guy is fucking crazy. This is the guy who I think started the whole Goya beans thing that you see Trump posting. Like, this guy will have tweets like, oh, it's a great morning, I'm going to have some Goya beans to own the libs, or something equally as stupid. This guy is fucking weird, and he posts like 10 times a day, if not more. Like, he's a fucking trip. I'm actually just going to very quickly go to his Twitter right now and see if he's given me any gold. So let's see what he said. Let's see. Let's see. Ellen DeGeneres is sick. Remember, Tom Hanks' first big break came when he was on a sitcom called Bosom Buddies. He makes a conspiracy theory about Chick-fil-A. How many are from COVID as opposed to motorcycle accidents? Just in Florida, he's talking about Florida records 1,230 coronavirus deaths in a single week. Found this radical leftist advertisement. Don't want to work, want to burn, loot, and pillage, want to sleep all day, want to collect $600 a week plus a Black Lives Matter stipend? Join us. So yeah, this guy's fucked. And entertaining in all the wrong ways. So yeah, if you ever want your daily dose of insanity, just follow him. KW Miller for Idiocy 2020. So yeah, that's pretty much all the news I got for you this week in terms of the weird category. That we did cut some stories about Massachusetts couple that was walking their dog naked and decided to run away from the cops. A man,
which sounded very Florida-like.
Yeah, but despite it wasn't, another guy was an amputee who went skydiving who lost his prosthetic leg, and a farmer found it. Luckily, it was retrieved all in one piece. And I think I had one other story, but I think that's pretty much it. So that's going to do it for this edition of the weird news this week here on Twig. And we're going to take a brief break, and this is going to be Alex's review of 12 Monkeys. Another apocalyptic scenario, which we will probably enjoy in 2020.
An apocalyptic scenario where somebody goes back in time to stop a pandemic.
How topical.
I mean, talk about timing, right?
I know, right? Jesus. So anyway, we will be back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Stay tuned.
Mill Creek sent over their new release of the Universal television adaptation of 12 Monkeys, the Terry Gilliam movie from the 90s. If you don't know the basic premise of the movie and television show, it is somebody goes back in time to stop a pandemic from basically destroying the Earth, which is kind of ironic and funny that the release has come out now. But interestingly, I had not caught the television show when it aired because I thought, oh, is it going to be any good? A lot of sci-fi shows get canceled before their time, and this ended up getting 4 seasons, which, you know, time flies. So they've included all 4 seasons over the course of these 8 discs in this set. Basically 2 discs per season. They look phenomenal on Blu-ray, better than from what I've seen of the broadcast quality copies that they put on streaming. You do get everything in surround sound, master audio. There's a bunch of special features, some deleted scenes, cast auditions, some webisodes, even some archival podcasts and a gag reel. Overall, pretty good production. The quality of the programming is what stands out, in that it's one of the better sci-fi shows, and definitely one of the few adaptations of like a cult classic movie that expands upon the original premise and makes it better. What comes to mind as well back in the day was the Dead Zone TV show ended up being better and probably better received than the Cronenberg classic from the 80s. This follows that suit. There's a lot of character actors that you see from most Canadian sci-fi shows that pop up in here, and it's always nice to see. As far as is it worth picking up, upgrading if you have the DVDs, there's a substantial visual quality update. And it's retailing right now for about $45 US if you go to Amazon. In Canada, it's $81. And that sounds like a pretty big jump. Usually our releases are similar in price, or you only have to pay like the conversion, so you'd figure it'd be somewhere in like 60. But if you go to import it, you're going to be spending 20 some odd dollars US on import fees. So it works out to roughly the same. So you're actually paying about the same if you buy it locally in Canada as if you were to import it from the States. So, this isn't a case of, hey, I'd suggest going and getting it from the American distributor. There's no difference between the releases, except that if you buy the Canadian one, it would have a little sticker on there giving the Canadian video rating on it. That's about it. So if you pick it up, especially if you're an American, you look at it like this. It's about $11 per season for a Blu-ray of a pretty good quality sci-fi show that is kind of a bit of an escape and a bit of, pondering where our world's at right now. So it's kind of fun, and I'd say give it a watch, especially. And at that price, it's cheaper than back in the day when you used to have to rent a season of a TV show. So if you're a sci-fi collector, 12 Monkeys, the complete series, is worth picking up.
You have 937 messages, all of which are marked urgent.
All right, guys. Well, that is the kind of show it has been here on ThisWeekInGeek.net, otherwise known as Twig, your flagship of stupidity. I have been, of course, Mike the Birdman, joined with Alex the producer, and of course, we always take the last little bit of the show to kind of tell you what is going to be coming up on the site this week. We actually got a surprising amount coming up for the month of August, and this week in general. Alex is going to be recording a new Turd or Treasure, so look for that later on this week. We are going to be recording some new Nerd to the Third Powers. We just had to shift around some recording there due to some personal issues that we're experiencing, but nothing that you need to worry about. Don't worry, you're going to get your weekly dose of nerds, sure, somehow. Me and Alex and our new friend, and who's been on Future Imperfect many times, but will be joining us on a new podcast, which you heard last month, called Loose Cannon. We're going to be taking a look at a film series that we got from, who did we get the Angel series from?
That's Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah, they released a series of exploitation films. Angel, basically, teenage girl is a prostitute who seeks vengeance on people who killed her friends, and guns, lots of guns. So Charles Bronson in a dress, but it's a lot more entertaining. And the first one is surprisingly well acted. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So being such a low budget picture,
yeah, like the actress, I can't remember her name for the life of me right now, but I really liked her. But yeah, so we will talk about that and some of the genre around that. We're also going to be doing more Future Imperfects, although Steve Megatron is currently moving, so he may be less frequent than normal. So it may be me, Alex, and Aaron taking that show over, depending on what is going on with Steve. So don't worry, we're still going to talk about all sorts of sci-fi topics, Star Trek. I'm sure we'll talk about Lower Decks as that premieres, I think, this week on the 6th, I think, on CBS All Access, maybe Crave in Canada, which I hope doesn't suck, but it probably will, but we'll see. I'm actually more excited about Lower Decks than Discovery. Figure that one out. What else is going on? So I've chosen the first book for Birdman's Book Club. Now, originally, it was supposed to be the Dragonlance novels, and that is still coming, but I want to cover this first simply because I do have to get it out for review, and it actually does look kind of neat. Actually, on my cover, it says uncorrected proof, not for sale. I'm going to be taking a look at the Overwatch novel, The Hero of Numbani, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it has Orisha on the cover, who's kind of like the other robot that isn't Bastion, who's pretty cool looking. So I'm going to read that hopefully in the next couple days. I have a bunch of RPG books from Modifius, from Robert E. Howard's Conan, Adventure in an Age Undreamed Of. I'll be looking at that. I covered the Art of Conan on the mini-sode with Alex about a week ago, and it's interesting to see different flavors of fantasy, because you think of fantasy, everybody thinks of D&D and now Game of Thrones. It's different to see a more brutal yet still fantastic world, and Conan was like one of the original guys.
Dark fantasy.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to kind of digging into that. I also have the new Star Trek Klingon book as well, so I'll be taking a look at that more from an update from a lore perspective, because Klingons have always interested me, but I know nothing about them, and I know they really expand upon it in TNG and DS9, so we'll take a look at that. What else am I missing? I'm trying to think here. Lots of reviews to come up. Like, I've recorded a lot in the last 24 hours because Alex yelled at me and I got really upset.
I didn't yell. I was saying, where are they?
Yeah. And I'm like, fuck. So I buckled down and did a shit ton. So I'm going to get a bunch more done in the next week. I've got a lot of reading to do. So Birdman's Book Club is coming. It depends on how quick. I'm actually just going to look at the book right now. I have to get through 294 pages. If in theory I can read that in a day if I just sit down and gun it. Plus, I just have to read some of my Overwatch lore because it's been years since I've really played the game. But I do still love the Overwatch franchise. I actually have Sombra out on my shelf right now. I bought her for like $10 from somebody on Facebook. So she is my bae. What else, Alex? Am I missing anything? We did a lot of prototypes.
I was going to say, you have a Vita title.
I do have a Vita title, so look for that
new release.
Yeah, on a dead system. So that'll be interesting. I'll be talking about that in the next week or so. I also have a PS4 game I was going to look at. I actually got 2 copies of this game, and I gave it out on Reddit as a secret Santa, and I said, this is from ThisWeekInGeek.net. So they were pleasantly surprised. So that was really cool. So anyway, guys, one last major announcement. So me and Alex were supposed to have a website relaunch in July. However, with COVID and with people moving and with just all these moving parts, we're pushing things back to the fall. And if you've been on the internet for any length of time, website relaunches and stuff gets pushed back all the time. So this should come as no surprise. So we're hoping to get this done in the fall, very, very early. Before my birthday would be the preferred time. But we are working on getting things done, getting everything done in the background. Everything should look nice, slicker, more in line with 2020 web design.
In my mind, ideally, as long as everything's ready for the new console launches.
Yeah.
And unless they push those back, then we'll just, we're staying with a fall release.
Yeah. So look forward for that, folks. Speaking of new consoles, we are planning on covering those. So the second pre-orders go live, we will have new consoles in our grubby little hands in some capacity. So I guess that's just about it. So anyway, guys, we are going to take off here on ThisWeekInGeek.net for this week. Also, and I guess one minor announcement, this is more of a personal announcement for me. You may have noticed in some of my reviews and even in the show, I'm just going by Mike the Birdman now. I may be transitioning, not like that, but I may be dropping my adoptive name. I may be reclaiming my native name, the name I was actually born under, part of my blood name. For those of you that don't know, I was adopted in the early 80s, and I was part of something called the 60s Scoop. And there is a process in which you can reclaim your birth name. And I'm thinking about doing that. So Birdman Dodd may be my stage name, but I may start transitioning out of it. I'm still going to have my social media be Birdman Dodd because I ain't throwing away 13 years of branding. Fuck that.
It'd be like starting over from scratch, dude.
Exactly. So no, but I may be transitioning out of it. So things are going to be changing on my end. We're still discussing some things in my personal life, basically how it will affect others in my life. But just know things are changing, and 2020 is going to be a year of change, and I'm not going to let this dumpster fire of a year ruin me. I want things to be better. I want to be better. I want to reclaim a part of me I don't know a lot about. And I think that's important that I reconnect with who I am as a person. So I encourage you, if ever you seek something similar, whether you're transitioning as part of becoming transgendered, if you're not happy with who you are as your name, because I've heard people just change their names because they're not happy. If you want to be who you truly are, then I encourage that. And I've had friends of mine change their names. There's a girl I grew up with who changed her name, and she seems a lot more happy with it. And I've had some friends in my personal life change their names and change their identities to be more in line with who they actually are.
Yeah. And one thing to consider too is it's one thing to change it just publicly with your friends. There is a longer legal process if you really want to change it, especially last names.
Yeah, like there's a lot I'm gonna have to look at, but I'm thinking maybe this is me. Like there's a lot of baggage attached with my last name in terms of the trauma I experienced kind of growing up, and I've never really talked about it on the show because there are certain things that are just for me and my close friends, and I've always been very open with certain things, but certain things sucked growing up, and maybe it's time to shed that weight.
I was going to say, there's nothing wrong with, if you didn't have, the best childhood and you want to go, okay, well, what can I claim for me?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm getting almost 40 years old, and maybe I don't think this is a midlife crisis. No, this is just me changing things. So I will keep you people posted as things change, but
Birdman's going to be Birdman.
Yeah, I'll always be Birdman, no matter what. So that will never change. So I guess on that, hopefully positive note, we will go. So until next time, we have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike, the Birdman, saying be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.